This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. And hopefully soon Toronto. Boy, my fingers are so crossed. So crossed.
Mhm.
But folks, here we are on May 9th, 2023, and I have a four-time guest on here today. Um, he's doing the whole Prince thing, formerly known as the shit flicks critic. I'm
I never said
sorry.
that. I can still be the shit flick critic.
Oh, so you're not trying to copy Prince. You're not trying to copy
No,
one of the biggest pop singers in history.
well, no. I mean, I am a musician, so I'm copying him in that sense. But no, I'm still
Are
the
are
shit
you
flick
gonna
critic. I haven't changed my name to a symbol.
are you going to sing Raspberry Beret for us? Are you
It is a good song. Raspberry beret. I
Folks,
kind
I've
of know
had
it.
him.
I don't know all the words. Hmm.
Folks, I give you Andrew Lewis for the fourth time here on Python's Paradise. How you doing, Andrew?
Yeah, pretty good. I'm just going to start talking in a real thick Australian accent all of a sudden. Yeah,
Why?
I just like I don't know, just because I feel like it. I get sick of my own voice sometimes. I'm too. Sometimes I want to see more Australian, have more street cred. But no, I can't help it. I'm from Adelaide, so I'm quite pompous.
Yeah, in
But
Australia,
I got a good.
what was that?
Go on.
I was gonna
I
say
was, yeah. You go.
I was gonna say in Australia you have what I like to call the jumping deer, the kangaroo.
Actually, it's funny you should say that because yeah, we may have had this conversation before, but kangaroo actually are quite similar to deer. They're basically
Yeah,
just
they both play on the
deformed deer.
road apparently.
Yeah, that's a big problem. I remember, yeah, someone told me I was in Australia and I was driving home through the countryside, and someone said, "Oh, be careful of kangaroos." I went, I'd never seen a kangaroo before, and then I turned a corner on the road, and there were six of them just sitting on the road, staring right at me, and I'm going 110 kilometers an hour. So I had to slam my brakes on pretty quickly.
Yeah, and they were probably doing exactly what our deer do. Stand there with their ears
Nothing.
twitching, gawking,
Yeah. Yeah. The question I was going to ask was, who have you interviewed the most? Do I have the honor of being your
No,
most frequently interviewed?
no,
Yeah, I
no.
knew it.
Um,
I knew there'd be like 15.
okay. In terms, it kind of goes in two parts here for me. The guest I've
Okay.
interviewed the most will be Scotty McCoy, who's is the host of Slasher Scotty. He did a movie called Sam Hain. Scotty I've had on here as of right now seven times. However, he isn't my
That's
most. He isn't the guest I've had on here the most, but he is the guest
Mhm.
I've had on here about himself, and I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. I've had
Okay.
Jeffrey Mark on here, I believe eight or nine times. But Jeffrey Mark, I interviewed as an entertainer three times. When I met
Mhm.
Jeffrey Mark through somebody else, he did a lot of tribute interviews with me because he knew a lot of people. Um, he did tribute on Lucille Ball. He did
Mhm.
Ella Fitzgerald. He did Mary
Mhm.
Tyler Moore. He did Steve Allen, Milton Berle. He did Dom Wells. These are people that he knew personally,
Oh wow.
and he was able to come on here. So when I put them on YouTube, I always put I don't put interview with Jeffrey Mark. I put so and so tribute, and I'll put in the
Okay.
description, that Jeffrey Mark was the guy, But Jeffrey Mark, though, what a great entertainer he is, uh, very colorful guy. I When he comes on here, He does, like I said, he knows a lot of people, but I also, I had him on to talk about himself. In fact, last year when I turned 50, I actually had him come on and interview me on my birthday, you know, and
Hmm.
I knew
Hmm.
he'd be the guy to do it. And um, yeah, I had so he would have been on the most, but I always say because when I do tribute interviews, like I put it under the name of the person that we're tributing, But in terms of in terms of him, I've got three interviews where it says, Jeffrey Mark interview one or interview two or interview three, You get what I'm saying there?
Okay. It's a
Yeah.
challenging category, but I think if you've spoken to a human being, I would consider that an interview. So I think the 8 or 9 seems like the hot ticket. So that's pretty good. So we got to do a lot more to catch up. So we should
Yeah.
we should do them daily. I want to get to 300, so then I know no one else could beat me,
There you
and it would
go.
be Andrew Lewis 300 interviews, and then 9, and then 7, and then the rest.
There you go. There you go. But
We might
but
run out of stuff to talk about.
and I've had musician TJ Doyle on here 6 times, and it's interesting with some of these people that I have on a lot. Um, and I usually have people on once a year, but
Mhm.
if they're on here with somebody else, then they could possibly come on again, because you don't want to
Mhm.
oversaturate. But the same token,
Yeah.
there's some people I have on here every year without even knowing what I'm going to ask them. I just know they're going to bring their A game. Like TJ Doyle was on here. He comes on here every January, and I had no idea what I was going to ask him, but it didn't matter because I knew he would have something. And he's always had a willingness to come on here and talk about whatever he's been doing, and he was somebody I was forwarded to me by the management of a friend of mine, and he sends his clients my way. So I had a wonderful chat with TJ Doyle the first time I had him on, and every year he's just like, if somebody's game to come on here, who am I to say no, So I have TJ Doyle on, and I just had Leanne Curtis from 16 Candles on. Well, it's her fourth interview, but technically she's been on 5 times because she was on once with her
Is
mom. And
is that the girl with the red hair?
no, that's Molly Ringwald.
Okay, I was going to say that's a good get. But
Molly would be a good get, but I don't know whether Molly would be as outspoken as Leanne, because I'll tell you, Leanne has no filter, and it's exactly why I always keep asking her back on, because I don't have to have questions prepared for Leanne, because I know full well once she gets talking, it's her platform, and I love it. I love it every time, And like there's Genevieve Rossi I had on again this year. It's like involved in the indie film world. Like there's people that I know that have something else more to bring to the plate. James Balsamo I have on quite a bit. Of course, you're in one of his movies with me. Catch of the Day too, which
yeah, I
our
remember that scene vividly.
that was fun, but we shot it for a different film, so how it ended up in Catch of the Day 2, I don't know. So I'm kind of at a jumble about I know what movies I film scenes for. I
Mhm.
can't figure out his process of what he's going to put where. And so anyway,
Yeah, do you know where I can watch that, or do I have to get the DVD?
I have no idea. You might have to get the DVD. I don't know. You,
Yeah,
you
I don't know if
got
I'm that
me.
committed.
You got me. I've seen Cool from Hell 2. I've seen It Wants
Okay.
Blood, and I've seen Catch of the Day 2, all of which I'm in. Now, It Wants Blood was my favorite of the three because I'm being watched on a television by Eric Roberts. I'll take that, I'll take that. I'm in scenes with
Mhm.
Eric Roberts and we didn't even meet each other. I'll take that,
Eric Roberts. Is that? I know I've been wrong about 8 times now, but is that Julia Roberts' brother?
Yeah. And he was in
Yeah. Okay. Good. Right.
Babylon. He was in Babylon recently, and I'm like, yeah, I would love to work with Margot Robbie. You have no idea. I'd love to work with Margot Robbie.
Yeah. Yeah. She's something else. But okay. Well, that all seems to be going well, and yeah, it's nice to be on here again, and it's always nice because you always seem to want to do an interview when my life has sort of changed the most rapidly again. So
Yeah,
it
yeah,
always seems
yeah.
to coincide with a big change.
You messaged me recently and you said, "Hey, you want me to come on the show again?" By the way, I'm in Mexico right now, and I'm like, "What the? What?
Yeah,
Are you the littlest
I live in
hobo or
Mexico.
what?"
Basically, I live in Mexico. I live in a place called Durango. I got an apartment here, and yeah, just life is just really relaxing here. No one really expects you to do anything. I feel like in our culture, like Australia, Canada, America, England, and whatnot, there's a lot of expectations on what you should be doing. Whereas I feel like with Mexico, everyone just kind of does what they want, and you can do what you want. People listen to their phone on the bus without headphones, but then I can listen to my phone on the bus without headphones. It's there's no rules. You just don't hurt anyone. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. Well, yeah, you're like a world traveler, and it,
Kinda.
yeah.
Hmm.
And then you go back home to Australia, and the kangaroos are standing out there and blockading your path that are on the road because they want to know what your stories are before you tell anybody else.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So, and back in Australia, it was okay. I had a good time. Worked on that radio. The last time we spoke, I was working on the radio, but that
Hmm.
all kind of fell apart because it turned out to be a super abusive environment. And it's a long story, so I'm not going to bore you with it. But I basically called them all out. I put through a formal complaint, and then after I put through the formal complaint, I realized how broken the entertainment industry is because no one really cared, and so I just quit and tried and started traveling again.
You know what? I got terminated from a job recently as well, so I mean, I could certainly get it.
But
You put, and in my case, I won't get into in detail, but
yeah,
I I put my neck out for a lot of people. I had done some 18-hour shifts, and all I could say, as I was told I was a number, and I always brushed that off because I never looked at my coworkers as a number. But when I got terminated, oh, I found out who was going to contact me and who wasn't, and it's kind of hurts sometimes, when you find out that people you thought you were tight with never reached out. Actually, I had one of them. My phone rang and woke me up about a week ago. One of my former coworkers called there, and I was quite happy to hear from her until she accused me of quote unquote shit talking her to other people. And I said, no, I didn't shit talk you. I said I was talking casually with somebody that works there, and I had said, I thought I was tight with this person, this person, this person, whatever, and so on and so forth. And none of them had reached out to me after my termination and asked, how I was doing. Are you okay? Do you need somebody to talk to? You know, they never did that. But I stopped and reflected on it, and I was like, this person and a lot of them didn't give a shit about me. The only reason this person was calling me is to validate herself. You know,
Yeah, I
yep.
was especially I was a bit disappointed because I had a co-host. I was doing like a morning show. It was the Magic Morning Show with Jack and Drew, and
Hmm.
it was one of those really lame morning shows on like a hit music station in the countryside. It wasn't. It was smaller than how many people are in Fredericton? What's the population?
Good question. I don't have it right in front of
Let
me,
me
but
let me let me look that up right now.
hmm.
Fredericton population. Fredericton, New Brunswick population. Actually, no, it's way smaller. So Fredericton, 60,000. This town that I was in was 13,000. So not a lot of people. But I had this co-host and we really didn't click that well. And just like what you're saying, the moment I quit, she just never messaged me. And then the only time she did message me, I was in Mexico. And it was only because something was wrong. So she sent me a message. She said, "Hi, I hope you're enjoying your travels." And I said, "Don't patronize me. You haven't sent me anything in 6 months. Like, don't pretend you care about me. You've had ample opportunity to send me a message going, 'Hey, how are your travels? What are you up to? Where are you now?' 6 months, no messages. And then only when something's wrong, she wants to get a hold of me. And I just said, look, do me a favor. Don't talk to me anymore. You're not a friend. And
Yeah.
she hasn't. And I'm better for it because life's better here in Mexico. I'm still want to do a podcast. I
No,
want to
there you
use all
go.
of the I want to use all of the knowledge that I learned in the radio and do some sort of podcast. Me and my I've got a Mexican girlfriend. We're thinking about doing one together, all about mental health and nothing to do with
Oh,
shit
do
movies. I'm
one.
afraid.
Do one.
I'm
Yes,
afraid,
yes, yes, do one. Do one on
mate.
mental health and how watching The Room and Birdemic and Cool Cat Saves the World, how it affected your mental health.
Actually, it's funny you should talk about Birdemic because even though I'm not doing the shit flick critic at the moment or potentially ever again, um, when I was recently in Vancouver, I stayed at a friend's place and he'd never seen Birdemic before. So I sat with his brother and we watched it. And I forget how bad they are because I've seen them so many times. But when you watch them with someone else that's never seen them, they were just shocked at how incredibly poor. Even just like the first scene, you cannot beat the first scene of Birdemic when he walks into that diner and all the audio is messed up. And she goes, it's just words can't describe. And then he's so weird to her. He like follows her out of the restaurant and, "Hey, I noticed you from afar." Anyway, it's I need to see some more bad movies, but I think I spent 10 years basically watching one almost every day. And there gets a point where you know it starts again, as you said, it starts affecting your mental health seeing such poor movies.
You need to see Oogie Loves and the Big Balloon Adventure.
All right, I'm going to type that into Google right now so I can see what you're talking about. Oogie Loves.
It's one of my favorite cinema snob videos. Watching him react to it, it was yeah. I can't believe I saw that in the theater, and I'm embarrassed that I saw it. But I'm kind of glad I saw it when I stop and think about
All right. All right.
it.
It's got a 1.7 rating out of 10 on IMDb, so I'm interested. I remember when I visited you, uh, when I hitchhiked, seems weird to say it now, but when I hitchhiked to Fredericton from Halifax, I remember we watched that
We
movie about
watched
zoo animals.
yeah, Wild Beast. I saw
I
that
remember,
at a screening
yeah.
at Horrorama 2018. I got a copy of. There are movies I've got because I saw them, but I associate them with Toronto and Horrorama, and I've done
Mhm.
4 Horrorama events, and I've done 2 Frightmare in the Falls and 1 Toronto Comic Con. And my fingers are so crossed about landing a job in Toronto because I'm going to tell you, I love Toronto. I absolutely, like, you can look at my background as Toronto on here, I love Toronto. There's just so
I've
much
never been.
opportunity. I love Toronto. And I will be forever thanking Lisa Langlois. Um, she's an actress from Class of 1984 and Happy Birthday to Me and Phobia, movies like that. I'll be ever thankful for her for just, and she didn't have to do this, but invited me to assist her at Horrorama in Toronto. And it all came because we were talking about travel, because she had just moved back to Toronto from Los Angeles after living there for a long time. And because she's from here. And I'm going to tell you, I never, ever, ever wanted to travel because I get homesick just going from Fredericton to Moncton or St. John to see a concert. So
And
you could,
I've been to Moncton, so I know how far
yeah.
away that is.
So you can imagine my how terrified I was when she invited me to Toronto, but it's like I can't say no because I mean I've known who she
Mhm.
was since the 80s. I'm a huge Class of 1984 lover, and I'm like, so I said yes, and I'm gonna tell you that experience changed my life because it opened up my eyes to opportunities that could be, and I'm hoping to make a reality. And through Lisa, I've come acquainted with other people, including the band Blood Opera. Um, Even her hairstylist, Robin, is a friend of mine who I talked to yesterday, and he's been on here a couple times. And she would invite me to like if because she's got friends in the industry, and if there would be a party, and I was in Toronto, she would invite me, like she included me. And Lisa's wonderful, and she's become a wonderful friend. And I'm so hoping, fingers crossed, to make Toronto.
Yeah,
I
that
so
would be.
that
I
would
want to
be.
imbue you with good luck,
You know
and
what?
I hope that you get the job because that would be good.
I've never been a big fan of New Brunswick, and I'm not going to sit down here and shit on New Brunswick because New Brunswick is a great place to live if you want a little bit of a quieter life. And they call this a retirement community. I don't know. They could be right. I don't know. My parents were always boonies people. Like they like the country. I was always a city kind of person. Not until I got to Toronto did I realize how much of a city person, because but I was always like my parents were into country music. I was into rock. Dad liked westerns. I liked horror movies. It's just I was on such the opposite. But with me, I grew when I went to Toronto, I grew really weary of New Brunswick. And but I understand people that live here that like it here. I get it, like, but I get annoyed when
From my perspective,
people will tell me about the crime in Toronto or the gangs in Toronto or too many people or too much traffic. Number one, I'm not bringing my car with me because Ontario insurance is a lot higher, and I'm going to leave my car with Andrew and his wife, when I go. And
what you meant me.
I
I was like, yeah, I'll take your car.
well, I'm going to I'll continue to pay for the stuff on it. I'll do that because I've always done it. And I'll do that, and when I come back here to visit, I'll have a car I can use. But
With my perspective on New Brunswick,
mhm.
obviously I'm not from there, so it's totally from an outside. But I think what I really liked about New Brunswick was it was the province that I knew the least about, and it's the province that people talked the least about. So
Are you? Yeah,
everything
well,
there for
no,
me
no
was a surprise.
surprise. Are you kidding me?
But everything there was
I've often
everything there
joked.
for me was like, oh, look at this, isn't this interesting? You know?
I often joked. Like a lot of people don't realize New Brunswick is a time zone ahead of New York. We're in Atlantic Canada, not East Coast. And what I find funny. as I always joke that when they said that the ultimate warrior was from parts unknown, I often say, "Oh, what? Is he from New Brunswick?" Because nobody, and it always kind of annoyed me, nobody know. People know about Toronto, they know about Montreal, they know about Vancouver. They might even occasionally know about Nova Scotia occasionally. New Brunswick, you don't give a mention, and
Okay,
I
well,
probably
well,
gave
for
it
that
more,
perspective,
yeah. Mm,
on that note, I know exactly what you're talking about because try and guess which state I come from in Australia,
the state
and
of
I can
Kang,
tell you that there's
the state of
state of
kangaroos and
kangaroos.
cassowaries.
I can promise you, you will never get it because no one knows about it. Like when I tell people which state I come from in Australia, they're just like, I think they think I come from a region, like, and it's like, no, it's a state. I come from South Australia. When do
Okay.
like do you know New South Wales? Have you heard New South Wales or
You know
Victoria? Okay,
what?
you haven't heard those
I
either.
have. I've heard of
Yeah, so that's a
Victoria
state
and
that people
South
know about.
Wales. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I come from South Australia, and it's actually got more population than New Brunswick. I just looked it up. New Brunswick is like 700,000. South Australia, I think, is 2 million. But at the same time, I like that because I like coming from somewhere that people aren't rushing to go and see. I like the fact that my state in Australia is a lot more secluded, and people go to my city is Adelaide. People go to Adelaide and they have a good time, but it's not too touristy or it's. But that's what I like. I like tranquility. I've been to Sydney, I've been to Melbourne, and I'm not a big city person. They're just cities to me. It's just a collection of buildings.
So
I don't
where are
get it.
you
I don't get
from?
cities.
Where you're from there?
Adelaide.
What? Yeah, Adelaide.
Yeah.
What animals are there?
Okay. So obviously, well, I don't know if this is obvious, but in the city, I think the only thing you're really going to see is possums, and that's not the kind of possums you guys have. They're a different kind of possum.
Hmm.
So in the city, you're only going to see possums, maybe some blue-tongued lizards if you're lucky. They'll be under something in a log. The moment you start going a little bit out of Adelaide, you'll see tons of kangaroos. Emus, I'm not sure about Adelaide, but north of Adelaide, you get lots of emus.
Okay.
Lots of cockatoos, lots of. There. Did you know what an echidna is? An
No.
echidna is like a hedgehog. It's like an Australian hedgehog,
Okay.
but it looks a lot different. But it's a ball of spines, basically. We've got a lot of those around. Wallabies, kookaburras, a lot. Yeah, like the moment you go an hour outside of Adelaide, you'll just be surrounded with Australian wildlife, like New
What?
Brunswick.
What about the snakes? What about the snakes?
You don't get them in the city as much. I've never seen a snake in the city, but when I grew up in the country, you'd see snakes.
Yeah,
My
I
sister
love.
Emma,
Yeah.
she lives about an hour away from Adelaide, and she had a snake in her lounge room. They were watching TV, and it crawled up the corner of the room in the corner. I know I just said that, but and then looked at them. The big brown snake.
Oh shit.
Yeah, those are bastards. Yeah. So they had to kill it. Unfortunately, they didn't want to, but like, how do you get it out the house? They had to. My her partner went and got some sort of sharp thing and just cut its head off. So we
Oh.
get a lot of brown snakes. A lot. Yeah, it's. I don't like killing anything, but if it's in the house, it's hard to remove. I mean, I guess they could have called someone, but they've got a
Well, they
newborn
are
baby,
they
so
are
the last thing
deadly,
they want.
so they are deadly. I
Oh yeah,
know.
they're.
I mean, Australia's got the taipan. Of course, the taipans
Uh,
live in an area that's not very populated, so you don't see a lot of interactions. They, of course, got the
do you know
brown
where?
snakes. Huh?
Do you know where the taipan is? Do you know where the taipan is? Is it in the desert?
Just a second. I'm going to look on here because I know Steve Irwin, the
Yeah.
crocodile
Let's do it
hunter,
together.
did it. Okay. Yeah.
Taipan.
Yeah.
Taipan sanctos.
Taipan. Yeah. Because there's the inland
Taipan
taipan and
australiana.
there's the inland and there's the coastal taipan. I think the inland is the most poisonous of the two, but they're both on the top 10. So
Yeah. So from what I can see here, we have them in South Australia, but they're in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like they're near Lake Eyre, which is that's 10 hours north of Adelaide. But we do have them in South Australia, so okay, interesting. I've obviously never seen one, but
Yeah.
also a little bit of Queensland and quite a lot in New South Wales, surprisingly. But yeah,
Yeah. And of course the tiger snake is there, and so is the puff adder and or not puff
what
adder,
else?
death
I'm trying
death
to.
adder, death adder, not puff adder, death adder.
I've seen a lot of unlethal unpoisonous snakes. There's a kind of snake we get in South Australia that's black and it has a red line going along its belly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they're called, but I see those around. They're in water a lot. They're in fresh
Mm-hmm.
water. But they're I've swum with them and I've never been hurt or anything. I don't think they're poisonous. But yeah,
Yeah.
the brown snakes, they're bastards.
Yeah, and you guys have the box jellyfish, which I heard is nasty.
I think that's a Queensland problem. I think I'm going to look that up. I don't think we have them in South Australia, box
Yeah,
jellyfish.
I've heard they're
I'm
like on the top.
98.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
it's
heard bad
Queensland. Yeah,
things. Yeah, you
yeah.
guys
They
got
they
this,
give you a heart attack apparently.
and you got the saltwater crocodile, which I heard's the biggest of the crocodiles.
That's Queensland and the Northern Territory. So that's the north. We don't get those in South Australia. South
Hmm.
Australia, the worst we get is sharks. We get a lot of sharks in South Australia.
There you go. And of
A
course, the
lot. Like hmm.
cassowary. I can't forget that.
That's a Queensland thing as well. See, yeah, Queensland and South Australia, like they basically have completely different animals. I think they have kangaroos and stuff, but they're different. They're more because once you start getting really north, you start getting tree kangaroos,
Hmm.
which are almost like little bears in a way. They stay in trees. I think they're in Indonesia actually. I don't know if they're in Australia, but really interesting. They're marsupials and they're kangaroos, but they almost look nothing like what I think a kangaroo looks like. They look like little raccoons, kind of like little red raccoons.
And you get the dingo.
Dingo. I've never seen a dingo. Um,
Hmm.
I've heard I've heard people that have seen them, but I've never seen one. I don't think they're that deadly, other than obviously babies. Dingoes do take people's babies, but other than that, I think they're quite docile.
And of course, let's see if I can find it.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if I can find it here. I'm typing something in here because there was an animal that, yeah, I found a picture of it that became extinct from Australia in 1933.
Is that
1933.
the Tasmanian tiger?
Yeah, and I don't know how to pronounce the name of it. It's a cool looking animal, but
Is
1933.
it?
This
It's
is,
just it's like a tiger, isn't it? It's striped sort of dog thing.
yep.
I think it's just called a Tasmanian tiger.
Well, I do know
I
that there's people that are
Oh
saying
yeah,
that,
the
yeah,
thylacine, the
yep.
thylacine. But yeah, we just call it a Tasmanian tiger.
It's like,
Yeah, they're really fascinating. Mhm. Yeah,
so that thing is gone, but I'm like, jeepers, 1933, like that's not even 100 years ago.
yeah, poor thing. Yeah, the problem with Tasmania is it's very small. It's like imagine uh, what's the small island near you?
Prince
Prince
Edward
Edward
Island?
Island, is it?
Yeah.
It's about that big. So anything that's on it, if it gets killed too much, it's just going to die out. And it's Tasmania is also a lot further from Australia than Prince Edward Island, so it's a lot harder for species to recover. Actually, this is really dark, but a lot of the Aboriginals died in Tasmania and haven't come back, mostly from disease. Uh, yeah, I think it's one of the least populated states in terms of Aboriginal population because of disease.
Yeah. So I mean that's unfortunate, and I do think that I'm not a fan of poaching. I'm not by any chance. I mean, I'm not a vegetarian, you know, but the same token, I'm not into hunting for trophy, you know, like I don't get that,
Me
but
neither.
yeah.
I was a vegan for a year recently. The last time I spoke to you, I was vegan. Uh, I stopped being vegan when I came to Mexico because I felt it's a bit disrespectful to come to a country where people are starving and be so picky with food.
Hmm.
It's easy to be picky in Australia because food is so readily available that I can be picky. But to come somewhere where people don't have as much money, I just felt it was disrespectful to go into a poor restaurant and go, "Excuse me, do you have any vegan options?" It's like, just eat what's there.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's how I felt.
absolutely. Yeah. But nonetheless, I know that you had mentioned to me that you're doing a writing a book about your travels,
It's
and
true, yeah.
it's funny because you mentioned that I'm in the book now. You're like the second person in the last short while that told me that I'm in their book, and I just recently, last month or so, I interviewed R.G. Henning, who is the author of Sackhead, the definitive um, book on Friday the 13th, Part 2. And I was put in touch with him through another podcast personality. And what I didn't know is when I reached out to this guy, his response was, I knew who you was. Says, I spotlight two of your interviews in my book. Now you got to remember, I was reading his book at the time, and I had no idea my name is in the reference section. And I was like,
Wow.
wow, and I was touched, and he came on and we had a great chat, and I was honored, but I'd interviewed four or five people from that movie, and he had referenced a couple of my interviews, and I was like, wow, like thanks, So, and now I'm in your book, so I know you said to me that you had some excerpts you're going to read from um
Yeah, I do.
yeah, yeah, read from your New Brunswick. I don't know much about the others, but I gotta say, I gotta hear about me
Okay.
being mentioned in a book.
Well,
Skittles
I'll
is
start
asleep
from
over
the moment. Yeah.
Skittles is
Oh,
asleep over
perfect.
there, so he don't care.
Great. So we got some good time. So I'm going to start from the moment I get into New Brunswick from Nova Scotia.
Hmm.
And well, actually, that's not strictly true because I was in, is it Edmonton? I was in Edmonton first, but that was when I was coming through the first time. But then I got a ride from Edmonton straight to New Brunswick. Sorry, to Nova Scotia. So this is
Hmm.
when I'm coming back. And anyway, so here we go. As we drove out of Nova Scotia, the sky grew dark, and the horizon had a faint yellow glow that I had grown accustomed to in the east. Me and the man sat and talked about the history of Nova Scotia, and he pointed out to me some of the areas where battles had taken place in the past. It was night, and we arrived in Moncton. The and droplets slowly began to hit the windshield. I was not going into Moncton, so he pulled into a gas station and dropped me off at a Tim Hortons just as the rain got heavier. By the time I was in Tim Hortons, getting a bite to eat, the light rain had become a full blown downpour. I sat for hours in Tim Hortons and waited for it to pass, and when it finally did, I looked for a place to camp. I saw that across from the gas station there was a group of trees, but there was a problem. They had been completely flooded by water. I eventually found a spot that had some sort of ground covering in the trees that wasn't affected by the rain, as it appeared to be a little bit higher. I set up my tent, got in, closed the zip behind me, and got ready to go to sleep. There was a problem, though. This ground covering that initially seemed like a blessing was actually more like a hindrance. Even though it looked fine, it had totally absorbed all the rainwater. And when I laid down, it was like squeezing a sponge. My tent had
Oh,
very tiny little holes in the bottom. So slowly, the whole tent began to leak with water, and I became very cold. I put my rain jacket on with my hoodie underneath to insulate myself, but that only worked to a certain extent. When I awoke the next morning, I could see that the sun was out, which was perfect. I was wet, but at least I wasn't going to get any wetter. I got a coffee from Tim Hortons and checked my messages. Greg said that he'd like to meet me at Tim Hortons in Fredericton at 3 p.m. I hated hitchhiking with a deadline, but I was already so close that I knew that it wouldn't be long until I was there. Alas, though, it took about 3 hours to get out of Moncton. It was a 2 hour drive to Fredericton, and it was already 12:30, so I knew I was cutting it close. I tried to relax, but it was hard for me not to feel frustrated. Finally, as 1 p.m. rolled around, a car pulled over who could take me all the way to Fredericton. We hadn't been driving for very long when I'll skip all this part. It's just about me meeting a Acadian.
Okay.
So I'll skip to the part where we get to Fredericton. Uh, Unfortunately, so he pulled over to drop me off near Fredericton. Unfortunately, this was a long way from Fredericton itself, which means I had a lot of walking ahead of me. I had about 30 minutes to go until I met Greg at Tim Hortons, so I stuck my thumb out while I was walking to hopefully get a ride. To my surprise, a car pulled over and took me all the way to the Tim Hortons Greg was at, and I finally arrived at about 3 p.m. just on the dot. As I walked in, I saw what appeared to be Greg sitting in one of the booths in a leather jacket. When he saw me, his eyes lit up and he enthusiastically gave me a hearty handshake. The first thing he wanted to show me was Fredericton and his radio station. As we drove to the studio, the sun was low in the sky and the entirety of Fredericton had a soft yellow hue. We pulled into a small university where Greg did his radio show and we made our way inside. He took me downstairs and began showing me what he did. When I had an idea, I asked Greg, what if we do an interview now? He paused and realized that an interview was something that he hadn't actually thought of. Greg's show was centered around cult films, and he frequently interviewed cult actors. He only ever interviewed anyone over the phone. So if he was to interview me there and then, I would be his first ever studio interview. He didn't really say anything back, but I could tell that he was very focused all of a sudden. He invited me in the studio. We sat down, began recording, and we discussed everything that I'd been doing recently up until meeting him. If you'd like to hear that interview, here's the title on YouTube, and I put a link to the clip. Here we go. When we were finished, I could tell he was extremely happy with his first ever studio interview. He then took me to his brother's house, who was a fan of my YouTube channel. When I walked through the door, he was acting like I was some sort of celebrity, which was very bizarre for me, having just slept in a bush the night before. We sat down and talked for hours, and I really got on with him. When we finished talking, we had some group photos, and then I had to start working out where I was going to sleep that night. When the brothers asked me where I was going to stay, I told them I'd probably just find some trees to sleep in. When Greg said that I could stay with him at his parents' place. His parents had moved out of the house, so Greg had the entire house to himself. After saying goodbye to his brother, Greg drove me to the outskirts of Fredericton to a double-story house in the woods. When we walked in, it was very strange. The house looked like it hadn't been touched since 1979. The carpet was orange, the walls were that fake panel wood, and the kitchen cabinets were a pale green. I'm not saying it was a bad house, but it gave me a very strange vibe, like the houses I used to go and be babysit at when I was a kid. Before bed, Greg and I watched a terrible movie about escaped zoo animals that he had on DVD while I was waiting for my clothes to be washed. When we were going to bed, he told me that he could only bring me to Fredericton at 6 a.m. because that's when he started work. I knew I needed more sleep than that, but still went to sleep and got up in the morning. What do you think?
That was great. That was great.
That's
You
pretty
know,
much what
I
happened.
you know what? It's interesting because I wish I was a better writer than I was. And I remember when I was young, I wanted to be a writer, but I've never been good at observing, you know? Like when you, for example, when um when you get out at the Tim Hortons in Moncton, you mention stuff like the downpour. You mention what the weather conditions are like, but and you did it again whenever I was taking you to the station. You noted what the that the sky had turned to this color or whatever, you know. And I'm like, wow, like that stuff I would never think to mention, you know. You're a terrific writer and you're very observant
Thank you.
of your surroundings. And I like I said, when this book is done, I definitely want a copy and I'll definitely promote it for you, you know.
I will. I promise. I will send you a free copy. I promise. I'm going to send a free copy to anyone that helped me through the journey. So anyone that I still know who I've got on Facebook that helped me hitchhiking, let me stay at their place. They're all going to get a free copy. When it's I mean that we're still a long way away. I haven't even still got to publish it and do all that stuff. But it's getting very finished. My sisters are reading it, and I know they're pretty subjective because they're my sisters, but they all love it. They say it's really good. And Just to answer your statement before, I think the reason why I included the whole soft yellow hue in the sky is because that's what I love. I remember you
I
driving me,
love that.
and I remember having this really nice feeling of like, well, because the night before I was sleeping in a bush and I was feeling really like lonely and cold, and then now I meet this guy and the sun's out, and it's just I was just feeling really nice, like you know, I'm going to sleep well tonight. Yeah, so I try and include as much of that in the story as possible, just like little moments where something happened that gave me a nice feeling, or actually, can I read you something else?
Go for it. Yeah, please.
Uh,
Be my
this is the
guest.
opposite of that. But this is when
Oh.
something bad happened. So, and it
What,
happened.
what?
I don't think.
I thought that was watching Wild Beast.
No, it's slightly worse than that. Or actually, let's say it's on par with that. I don't know if I've ever told you the story, but this happened directly after I said goodbye to you. So
Oh.
let me just. Okay, I'll start from when we said goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go. We had a nice and warm goodbye. Our time together was a surprise for the both of us, and I'm sure it was something that neither of us would forget. I wasn't on the highway, but I was on the road that led west out of Fredericton to the highway. I took a solid couple hours, but finally someone pulled over. I told him I was going to Woodstock, and he told me that he would definitely be going that way. As we turned onto the highway, I noticed something. He turned east instead of west. I was hoping that he knew something I didn't, but after 10 minutes, it was certain that we were going the wrong way. Finally and gently, I brought up my concerns when suddenly he realized himself that he wasn't going the way that I wanted to go. He was very apologetic, but I told him it wasn't a big deal, and he dropped me off on the on ramp to go back on the highway towards Fredericton. I had wasted a little time, but there was still plenty of daylight to get back to Woodstock, or to get to Woodstock. I began hitchhiking again, where within about 30 minutes, a man pulled over in a van that claimed that he was a taxi. He was willing to give me a free ride. All I had to do was get in the back seat. I walked to the door and pulled on the handle, but nothing happened. Oh, you need to pull on the handle, he yelled, like I'd never done that before. I am, I yelled back. He then started doing a bunch of things. Try now. Nothing happened. It's still not opening. This went on for about a minute until he just gave up and drove away. I wasn't disappointed because after what had happened, it was strange, and I didn't want to spend too much time alone with him anyway. Okay, so this is getting to the real weird stuff. Finally, after 30 minutes, a car pulled over going back to Fredericton. He was willing to drop me off at exactly the same spot that I'd been hitchhiking that morning, so at least I could get back on track. When I was back at my spot, it took about 2 hours to get a lift. Eventually, a man in a little red hatchback pulled over and said that he could take me to the edge of Fredericton where the on ramp to the highway was. It wasn't very far away, but at least it was in the right direction. When he dropped me off, I picked my spot, but the traffic was now very quiet. As I waited, the sun was nearing the horizon. I'd spent all day getting about 10 minutes out of Fredericton. As I was there for a couple hours with no luck, I invented a little game for myself. It's kind of gross, but I would stand in a certain spot, spit, place a rock where the spit had landed. Then I would stand in the same spot and spit again and try and beat the distance. This went on for quite some time, and just when I thought the sun would set or I would run out of spit, a car pulled over. It was the same red hatchback that had brought me to where I was. He told me that he was happy to take me to Woodstock as it was Friday and he felt that he could use some company. I was happy to be finally leaving Fredericton, so I enthusiastically agreed. As I opened the door, though, I saw that there were multiple empty cans of beer on the floor in the passenger side. I didn't remember them being there when I first got in his car, but figured that maybe I just didn't notice. He didn't appear to be intoxicated, so I closed the door and we left for Woodstock. The man pulled out onto the highway and began to accelerate. First to the speed limit, 110 kilometers an hour, then 150, then 220 kilometers an hour. My heart started sinking and I began grabbing my legs so hard that my knuckles went white. I was highly uncomfortable and desperately wanted him to slow down, but for some reason I was unable to say anything. Every time I went to speak, no words came out of my mouth. I think I was mildly frozen with fear. He noticed my state and tried to put me at ease. Oh, yeah, I'm a delivery driver in these parts, so I'm driving these roads all the time. I go a lot quicker, but I've never been in an accident before, so just relax. Here, I'll put some music on. He took his eyes off the road, making my heart sink more, and got out a Matchbox 20 CD. As the track Real World began, I looked out the window. The sun was setting now, and the rolling hills of forest to the left of us were being lit up by the evening rays. It was so beautiful, and all I could think of to myself was, I don't want to die in New Brunswick. I want to see my family again. Please don't let this car spin out of control. Matchbox 20 continued as I closed my eyes, waiting for this ordeal to be over. The only good thing about this man driving so insanely fast is that was what was supposed to be a 25-minute drive ended up. Oh, sorry, I'll start again. The only good thing about this man driving so insanely fast is that what was supposed to be an hour drive only took 25 minutes. As I saw the sign letting us know that Woodstock was ahead, I began to rejoice mentally, but I knew it wouldn't be over until I was out of the car. He turned off the highway and pulled into a little gas station. As I was collecting my things, he remarked about how efficiently we had gotten there. I didn't say much, only a quick thanks, and then I watched him drive back onto the highway and heard his engine rev back to 220 kilometers an hour once again. Suddenly, I started breathing heavily. It was like my body had been reserving all my stress and was now able to let it out. I was frustrated at myself for not speaking up and asking him to slow down, but I just couldn't. To this day, whenever Matchbox 20 comes on the radio, I get intense flashbacks, and I always take a moment to appreciate the fact that I wasn't killed in New Brunswick. What do you think?
Wow. I'm glad you're still with us, but yeah, I would be nervous too
So,
with yeah.
so you're from New Brunswick and you're from Fredericton, so you know the highway that I'm talking about. Do you
Yeah.
think that's too fast? 200, yeah, it's insane. I was just like, man, we were going like,
You want me to
I was
tell you something?
terrified.
When I'm
Yeah,
driving in an area that is lined with trees and stuff, I don't go the speed limit because deer are all over the place, you know. And
yeah,
I remember with my first car I've ever owned, I've hit deer before. They'll jump out of nowhere and getting stopped, good luck, you know. I've never hit a moose, but I know going from here to St. John, the signs are up to watch for moose. Never seen one, but I'm well aware that
mhm,
they're there. And if hitting a deer is bad, I could just imagine what it would be like to hit a moose. So I'm very cautious. Like I don't even like a raccoon or anything like that to run in front of my car because it can cause damage underneath your car, you know? So
mhm.
I'm always very, very cautious. And if somebody's in such a hurry that they need to go by me, you know? But I'm always cautious of my surroundings when I drive because when you've hit an animal before and you know how quick it can happen, and depending on your reflex, and mine aren't that good that I can get stopped in time, then you know. But
Yeah, well,
uh,
that's what I was thinking the whole time. I was just thinking, what if one of his tires bursts? What if a deer jumps out? Like anything could happen, and he does not have enough time to slow down. And
yep,
even if for some strange reason his car just starts swerving out of control, like we're both going to die. And
yep.
I just couldn't tell him to slow down. I don't know why. I think I was just felt totally out of my element. But I got there and I got out, and obviously I'm fine today. But yeah, that was a hard way to leave Fredericton.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, it all worked out.
yeah. I'm going to be very interested in reading this book and hearing about some of the interesting people you've ran into and some of the places you've been and the ups and the downs, you know. And it like I said, you know, I don't go too far, but I've lived in my childhood home for 47 and a half years. And I used to get made fun of for it, you know. And I'm like, look, you know, I'm not one of these guys that sits in his parents' basement and plays video games and doesn't work. I've always worked. I worked at our family spring water plant for 19 years until was overcome with ALS, you know, and had to sell a company. But they moved into my grandparents' old house where there was less stairs, and that's why I was in
Yeah.
my childhood home longer because
Mm-hmm.
my younger brother was getting it fixed up for selling. But I lived there for 47 and a half years. And I often joke with people that,
Jeez
you know,
Louise.
my parents couldn't get rid of me, so they moved out first, you know, but but
Uh,
I moved
if
into
you,
this
mm,
apartment. My sister-in-law found this apartment for me here in Fredericton, and I moved in here in April of 2020. And I've been here ever since. And I wasn't planning to be here this long either, but because the plan was, and COVID totally fucked this up, among other things, but COVID was a big one. We wanted to do a housing project where Andrew and his wife lived upstairs and me and Skittles lived downstairs. That unfortunately never happened, and it's not likely to happen. And I have regrets that I didn't pool my resources and move to Toronto then. But I kept hearing the "you won't survive in Toronto, you won't make it," blah, blah, blah. Well, Lisa says otherwise, and so does a lot of people in her circles in Toronto. And Lisa had told me recently, she said, "You're the guy that got on a plane by yourself and just came to Toronto." She said, "That's the Greg I know." And because I've always been afraid. And here's the thing. I I'm right now working on getting a job in Toronto. And
mhm.
with my work at the hospital, I'm where the money's better, I'm like, I have a shot. I have a shot at that. And if I get
Well,
this job, I will pack up. It's only going to take one U-Haul. I'll pack my stuff up and I'll get a place in Toronto, and I'll make it work one way or another. I'll make it work. But and I've had people say, "Well, you vacationed in Toronto. That's why you enjoy." It doesn't matter whether I vacationed in Toronto or not. I would be number one if I get this hospital job. I'd be honored because of the hospital that it is. I'd be so honored. But you know what? I would be delighted to work in Toronto and be able to you go home every day knowing that I'll get to hear the sounds of the subways or the sounds of the streetcars, or knowing that whenever I get a chance, I can still do my podcast, or I can when I have some off time, I can go see Lisa, or I can hang out with the folks from Blood Opera, or what have you. But even more so, I'll have a better chance of meeting people, which is a friggin' hindrance here in New Brunswick. I'll tell you that. Meeting people.
well,
There's
I
all
can tell
kind.
you,
Yeah.
I can tell
Well,
you from my perspective that, yeah, uh, I before I did my big hitchhiking trip, everyone told me not to do it and that it was insane and that I
hmm
was going to die. And I did it, and it ended up being one of the most amazing experiences of my life. They're not saying it because they care about you. They're just saying it because you're doing something different. They're threatened by it, and if they can talk you out of doing it, then they can talk themselves out of doing it too. It's like, how dare you do something I can't do? I'll give you reasons not to do it. The best thing to do in those situations is just do it and find out why. Like, if it doesn't work out, you can always come back. But if you never do it, you'll always wonder.
Here's the thing. I don't want to come back to New. Look, I don't want to bash. I bashed on New Brunswick before, and all it did was create tension between me and other people. So I'm not going to do that here. But New Brunswick is an acquired taste. It's not a bad place to live. I'll say that. But it's too small for me. Like I said, when I went to Toronto, and a lot of people don't like Toronto. But my experience with Toronto is different. And again, I'll repeat myself. They say, "Yeah, but God, you were vacationing. It'll be different if you work." Well, yes and no. Yes and no. Because for me, waking up every day in a place in Toronto, knowing that I'm in Toronto, is going to be a blessing. Waking up every day having a job, a, a good job to go to in Toronto will be a blessing. Especially a job that I can definitely be an asset to. And for me, Toronto's a place of opportunity, you know. I'll be right there in Toronto, so if there is a convention, I'll be right there. I don't have to buy a plane ticket to go. I'll be
And
right
if I decide
there.
that I want to go to Toronto, if I go to Toronto, you'll be there. So
I'll be there.
I
I've got
I may.
friends in Toronto. I got friends in Toronto. Problem is, I got none of them can do me any good in terms of me staying at their place. Like, for example, Lisa brought up, I could have stayed at her place. The problem is, she said that she's allergic to cats, and I'm like, well, I guess that's out of the question. And my friends from Blood Opera, they live in Hamilton, so that's
It's far away, isn't it?
it's not far away,
Hamilton.
but if I am going to, let's just say I get a job at the hospital there, I would like to be able to get on a go train or subway and make it nice and short and get there. Because at the hospital here, I'm a 4-minute drive away. I'm about a 20-minute walk. It doesn't take me long to get there. I would like to be able to be as reliable as I can with my job, and quite frankly, I wouldn't mind living in the city of Toronto, within the city, or at least in an area where a GO train is close by that could get me to a subway where I could get where I needed to be, you know. Because transit's really good in Toronto, and if I can make that work, bravo.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've done what you're doing. God, how many times have I moved away from Australia? First time was Canada, second time was Canada, third time was New Zealand, fourth time was the UK, and then this time is Mexico. And yeah, no, just do it, and you'll love it. It'd probably be hard at first, but it's anything's better than being miserable where you are. So I wish you the best, and I just figured too, because I know we're pushing an hour, but I just remembered I would you like to hear just a little story
Go for
from
it.
my book? That's
Yep.
okay. It's not too long. I just again I want to show you some of the darker sides of hitchhiking. So
Oh,
here we go.
what, Rutger
Okay,
Hauer pick you
so
up?
yeah, well, close. So a lady dropped me off in a place called Welsh in, I think this was Saskatchewan. So she dropped me off in Welsh, and very quickly I had another car pull over. When I opened the door, I saw a man with a dark baseball cap, sunglasses, a dark blue jacket, and a black mustache. I don't mean to be mean, but his face was bloated. His skin was pasty white and was covered with a very thin layer of sweat. He told me that he was going to Swift Current, which was a place that was well into Saskatchewan. As we were making our way, he told me that he was originally born in Ontario and spent a lot of years as a blackjack dealer in Las Vegas. The topic kept us occupied for a long time as I had a lot of questions. How do you tell if someone's counting cards? Oh, sorry. What do you do when you find out that someone's counting cards? At what point do you tell someone that they've gambled too much? Are you allowed to stop someone playing if they've gambled too much? All these questions certainly kept us occupied for a while. We were about halfway when suddenly, and without warning, he asked me a question. Do you like blowjobs? My heart sank and I became extremely uncomfortable. I didn't know what to do. I immediately started thinking of ways that I could get out of the car if things started getting more serious. It dawned on me that this must have been the only reason why he picked me up in the first place. I decided to respond, but had to choose my words carefully. Uh, yes, I replied, but I guess it would depend entirely on who was giving it. Well, I love giving them, he asserted, hoping that he would win me over. Okay, I sighed. I appreciate the offer, but I'm afraid it's going to have to be a no. Then total silence, silence for what felt like an eternity. How do you recover from that? I tried to repair the conversation by bringing up random topics, but what was done was done. I was thinking about asking him to pull over and let me out, but A, he never brought it up again, and B, we were still in the middle of nowhere. I remember thinking to myself that I probably should have known better, given that he looked and dressed like a police sketch of a sex offender. There was one last incident that happened when we stopped in a gas station. Fueling up was something that happened a lot while hitching. And when he went out to fuel his car, I stayed like I always would. That's when he turned around. Excuse me, I'm not comfortable leaving a stranger in my car. Can you please wait outside? I did, as I didn't want to cause a fuss, but I couldn't help think, oh, okay, so it's okay for you to offer a complete stranger a blowjob, but God forbid I spend more than 5 minutes alone in your car. I started to feel like his attitude had changed because I rejected him. When we finally got to Swift Current, I made sure to say nothing that would allow him to think that I'd consider his offer in any way. So when he pulled over, I gave a quick thanks, grabbed my things, and hurried away. The end.
Wow. You know, you're a lot friendlier than I would been, I'll tell you that. Because the first off with
Well,
me,
it's
and
hard.
again, I'm not here to attack anybody's sexual preference. I'm straight. So me getting a blowjob offer from a guy would completely set me off, like turn me off, you know. Number
Mhm.
two, and I'm not saying if it was a female, I would accept the offer either, you know. Like
Mhm.
again, you know, it would depend on.
Well, even
Well,
the
I'm
only
not
time
even
I think
saying
it
I
would be
accept
okay
it, but
if
I
it was a
mean,
female.
but jeepers, if it was a female that I found extremely attractive, it might be something I would have given some thought to, you know. First
The
of
biggest
all, I
thing
don't
is
know
if
why anybody would offer to give me a blowjob because it's not like I'm anything to look at, but still,
no, don't say that. That's my friend you're talking about there. Um, so the only time I think it would be okay is if a female did it was if, let's say she's driving me, she finds me attractive, and she says, "Hey, what are you doing when you get to Swift Current? Would you like to come with me and get a coffee?" Sure, okay. Then we talk. Then things, if even if a female just said to me, "Do you want a blowjob?" I'd be like, "Whoa, whoa!" Like that's just such an intense thing to say without any warning. And even okay, let's change let's change the thing. Even if I was gay, again, it's still just like it's when you're alone in a car with someone and there's no
hmm
way out and you're in the middle of nowhere, it's a very intense thing to be asked.
Yeah.
Again, it would be different if when we got to Swift Current, he said, "Look, do you like guys?" Again, let's assume I'm gay. Yeah, I do like guys. Oh, okay. Would you be interested in coming with me? We could get a coffee together. Uh, Look, I'm okay. I really appreciate it, but like that's different to do you like blowjobs? It's like, geez,
Yeah.
where is this going? How do I get out of here? Is he gonna get a knife out? Is he gonna, attack me? I don't know. So yeah, it was not the best experience, but I still love hitchhiking, and I had way more good experiences than bad, like phenomenally more. But every now and again, like the guy that drove too quickly and him, those ones I remember very very distinctively. I don't know if
Mm.
that's a good word, but
What do your sisters think of
in
these stories?
oh, they love them. Yeah, like they've been reading it, and mum's reading it too, and she said some things are easier to hear than others, but yeah, no, they love it, and they're really interested. So yeah, I don't know how. I've never done a book before, so I don't really know what to do. But all I'm going to do is just take it step by step and contact people and see what happens.
I think it's number one, just listening to you read it, you know. I think you're a terrific writer, you know. I mean, you're a terrific online personality doing the shit flicks critics, and I know that you don't really do that anymore, and that's fine. I'm not going to convince you to go back to it. I think shit flicks critics was great, but hearing you read your book, I'm like, wow, there's another avenue that you can go down that you're very good at. And if you got a thing like
Okay,
you've got,
thank you.
yeah, but you got experience on the radio. You mentioned you and your girlfriend doing a pod. Do it.
Yeah,
Do it.
yeah, we're waiting for all the things to fall in place, but we're definitely going to be doing that. She wants to come to Australia with me, so we don't know if we're going to do it now or later. But yeah, there's a lot of things I love. Like I love the shit flick critic. It's something that I was very proud of when I was
hmm
finished. It just got to a point where all I'll say is, and it's very simple, it just stopped being fun and it started being work. And I don't like that. It started being like I felt, and it's a personal thing, but it felt like I had to do it as opposed to I wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's annoying. It's annoying because I wish that it was something that I could just do every week and not care. But I'm just the kind of person where I need variety, and I loved it. But at the same time, like, I know you love bad movies. I love bad movies too. Do I want to talk about bad movies for the rest of my life? I don't know. Do I want that to be my thing? I don't know. I have a lot of other things like my music and a lot of other things that I want to do. So it's again, it's not to say that I'll never ever do another episode or that I didn't enjoy doing it. It just stopped being what I wanted to do.
Understandable. Understandable. Well, you know what? It's been fun having you come on here today, your fourth time, and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully next year, I'll reach out to you again next year. We're still connected and
Who knows where I'll be? I'll probably be in Antarctica
oh, you don't want to go
or
there. Too much
or
snow.
no, I'll probably be on Mars. I'll be one of the first people sent to Mars. Although that takes 6 years to get there, so somewhere strange, Greenland. Um, yeah, we'll just see. But no, it's always nice talking to you. As I said, it's nice to have an update and sort of say what I'm doing to get it more organized in my own brain. And I'll let you know how the book goes. And as I said, you'll be getting one of the first copies,
Uh,
signed, sealed, delivered.
Well, much, much, much appreciated, and it's always great having you on here, and I love that we kept in touch. And Andrew really enjoyed meeting you as well. He looks back on that fondly.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing to happen. I know that we're going to go, but as a final thought, I forgot where you were in Canada, and I was having some problems. Like when you read the book, you'll see that I was having some problems in Halifax. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know how to
Mhm.
get to the border. And I was at this girl's place and we weren't really getting on. And I was like, what am I gonna do? And then this thing just popped in my head. I was like, where does Greg live? I remember him living in the east, but I can't remember exactly where. I think it was New Brunswick. So I sent you a message and
Uh-huh.
you said, yeah, I'm in Fredericton. I was like, that's on the way to the border. I could see Greg. And it was such a spur of the moment. Like, I think that was the day before I met you. I sent you a message like, do you want to meet up? And then I hitchhiked all the way to Fredericton and we met up. And yeah, on the way out, it was like, man, that was a really good, completely random, impromptu event.
Yep.
No organization involved. Just I'm coming to Fredericton. I'll say hi.
Yep,
That
absolutely.
was
And I
mhm.
remember at the time Andrew and Tracy owned a couple ferrets. They're no longer with us. Skittles is around though. Just a minute, bring Skittles
Yes.
over.
I
I'll bring Skittles
I
over.
think I remember Skittles. I
Skittles.
just want to let everyone know that Greg is a very special man.
That's
Can't hear
right.
me.
Skittles. This is my buddy Skittles. You remember Skittles?
Mhm. I do, yeah.
Yes.
I don't remember Skittles from. I don't know if I met Skittles. Was Skittles at your parents' place?
Yep. But he
Okay, yeah.
was
I
an
don't
outside cat
specifically.
then. He's an inside cat
Oh,
here because
okay.
I won't let him
Maybe.
outside 'cause I don't want him to get hit by cars. Yeah,
Maybe.
he's my
I guess.
buddy. And he's completely
Yeah.
embarrassed. He's embarrassed.
No. I do. I remember the ferrets quite vividly, and I remember I didn't meet Tracy, but I met Andrew, and we
Yeah, I
talked
think
for
Tracy
2 or 3
was
hours.
visiting her folks. That's what I think. And Andrew had the place
Yeah.
for himself there at that time. So I think Tracy was
Yeah, and
because yeah, her folks are from
we filmed.
Nova Scotia, so she was visiting them. So
Oh yeah, oh yeah. All right. Well, lovely talking to you, Greg. Glad to hear about Toronto. Let me know how it goes. Give me any
oh,
updates, and as I
I
said,
am so
fingers
hoping.
crossed I can come visit you. Yeah.
You know what? I'd love to have you come to Toronto, and visit. I am so hoping it happens. I need Toronto in my life, and it's
Mhm.
something I've been praying for so long, and I'm hoping that God will answer that prayer for me. And It's funny because I saw a movie not long ago that reminded me of my Christian beliefs. It was called Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. And it really plays around with religion and family. And it
Mhm.
was a very smart movie. And what I found funny about it is that she wrestles with a lot of stuff. Like the movie wrestles with a lot of stuff in terms of the different types of religion. Does God hear you regardless? And there's some places where she gets frustrated with God, and I've been there. But I loved it when the smoke clears. God,
Yeah.
it's me, Margaret. Thank you, or whatever it is that she says there at some point there. And it didn't matter what religion. She knew there was just one God, and she knew who she could channel to. And when I was watching that movie, I was like, you know what? I get these frustrations because I'm like, Lord, I want to. There was some point in the movie that I really related to because she didn't want to leave the big city to go to Jersey. I think it was New Jersey,
Mhm.
but things worked out where they were going to go to Jersey. And she says at one point, she says, Lord, please don't make me go to Jersey. But then she says, if I have to go to Jersey, please don't make it suck. And I'm sitting there thinking to
She used
myself,
those words.
something along those lines, yeah. And I'm sitting here listening to that and I'm thinking,
Mhm.
you know, there's worse places to live than New Brunswick, and it might not be my cup of tea, but I remember saying something similar in my prayer life. I was like, Lord, please open the door for Toronto for me, please. But if not, please make New Brunswick suck a lot less for me, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Because I just
Mhm.
feel that I've done all I can here, and I'm here well past when I should be, and I should have moved to Toronto back when I had a lot more money on me, but I was hearing this and hearing that and being jerked in this direction, jerked in that direction. And now it's like, with the job at the hospital, I was like, I think I might have a shot here, because, you get a job at the hospital, you're making decent money, you can move up, and I could probably, I needed a job where I could survive in Toronto. And that was important to me. I didn't want to just move to
Yep.
Toronto and live on the street. I don't want to live on the street. I've seen homeless people here in Fredericton. It's not pretty to see. And I've been to Toronto where I'd see people asleep right in the subway station area. And it's not pretty to see. I don't want to end up like that. So I need
I'm sure you
work.
won't. And yeah, as I said, as soon as you get a job, let me know, and it'd be nice to hear. But it's just nice that things seem like they're uh, moving forward, and they are for me. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's nice to catch up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I encourage you to do a podcast, you know,
I'll let, and that's something I'll keep you up to date on. I'll let you know as soon as we get started and we get the ball rolling.
and I
But yeah, it was
encourage you
lovely talking
also
to you,
to,
and good luck.
yeah, and I encourage you also on your book because
Yes,
it
I'll
sounds to me
keep you
like a
up to date
great
with that
read.
too.
Yeah. You're going to
Okay,
do,
fantastic. Because I don't, yeah,
I think you mentioned to me you're going to
yeah,
do a part two where you go to the States. Is that still on the table?
yeah, yeah, definitely. States, Mexico. Then I bought a boat in England and went around on a boat. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about. So Canada's only just like, I'd say about either a third or a quarter of what I've done. So there's a lot more to talk about. So I just got to write it, and I'm not, it's writing doesn't come easy to me, but I'm just taking deep breaths and just writing what I want to put down on paper, writing
Okay.
what interests me. So yeah, that's it. So, and speaking of which, I might do some writing now or
Okay.
soon. Get because Picks up all my spelling errors, of which there are many.
Well,
Yeah.
folks,
Okay.
we've been talking to
Hmm.
Andrew Lewis, aka the Shipflix critic, aka a phenomenal writer, aka world traveler, aka you name it. Andrew, we will see you again, and
Uh-huh.
look forward to it.
Yeah. No. Nice to talk to you, Greg, and I'll catch you later.
Absolutely. You take care and God bless.